Yes, I know. It sucks, man. It's hard. It's scary. It's terrifying. That's what makes an adventure. If it wasn't a little bit terrifying, it might not even be fun. Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn David Nelson, on this beautiful new year, 2026 special solo edition. I've never done this. Your living history. This is the first ever where you get just me. No, don't hang up yet. This might just be interesting. I'm about to lay it on you. I'm about to lay it on you. You wanted to know how I think about things. I feel compelled to share it. So happy New Year, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, take your pick. It's all past us. Now it's the future. Here we go. This is a time, by the way, to reflect and to reset. As cheesy as it is, as cliche as it is, New Year's resolutions and the like, take it. Don't shirk that opportunity. It only comes around once a year, and I know we usually fail by the 20th, but this is a chance to reflect and reset, and that's the spirit of today's episode. I'm going to attempt to answer two gigantic questions, at least two questions that I think are gigantic. What the heck is wrong with this world? I mean, like right now, 2026, this world, and how do we deal with it? What should you do? What should I do? What should we do? What can we do about this broken, effed up situation that we find ourselves in, even amidst all the opportunity and happiness and abundance that we can afford ourselves if we make good decisions? So we'll talk about this. And look, I start from a place where I think every person on earth, I mean, even my children who are, not yet fully developed adults, they want self-confidence. I think we all want some more self-confidence. We could use that. We want some positivity, happiness, pick your word. Want more of that in our life. We would love to feel more love. We would love to feel loved. I mean, who doesn't want these things? And I am going to tell you how to get them, at least from my point of view. So I've broken it down to two simple answers to what's wrong with this world. You can believe that. Two simple answers that I don't hear talked about enough. And three timeless principles, pieces of advice that I think they are a sure path to more of that self-confidence. They are a sure path to more of that self-confidence, positivity, happiness, and love that I think we all desire. So why am I doing this? The other day, I'm driving in my car. We're dropping off Christmas cards to the post office. We send out a mass amount at this point. I've really tried hard to stay in touch with my friends and acquaintances. And it's a drop in the bucket, but one way to stay connected. And I'm taking my son also to buy a gift for his Secret Santa, his sister. And as we're driving, my son asks me this strange question. He says, Dad, I turned down the Christmas music. He said, why does our president keep making such bad decisions? And there's a lot of ways I could answer that question. And I first found it strange. Like, where's this coming from? Like, what's he seeing? What's he reading? How does he even find news? What news is he getting? And as I reflected upon how I would answer that question and my own worldviews, it kind of hit me somewhere as I'm taking my son down the rabbit hole, that I would love to share some of these thoughts with you all. So that's where this comes from. And to some degree, what I'm about to share with you was my answer to my son, although, my answer to him was about 45 seconds long. And I think I can probably go for 45 minutes. So brace yourself. What's wrong with this world? I'll give you the answer straight up. And it's not one I hear talked about enough. I believe, ready, drum roll? I believe what is wrong with this world is that there is just too much money. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, especially on those terms. And especially because I don't think anyone listening feels like they have too much money. I'm guessing. I don't feel that way. But in the world, there has been created, especially in the last few decades alone, too much effing money. And let me tell you about, I'll get to how this links back to why our president keeps making mistakes or what that means, or we'll get to that. But at its core, let's rewind for a second. So money in its modern form, the US dollar, is the currency of the world at the moment. There are certainly forces that would love to see Bitcoin take over. There's BRICS nations trying to create new currency to compete, whatever. But the world that we live in today runs on the US dollar, and its supremacy has roots back to the early 1900s. Let's talk about the creation of the Fed. I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson here. It will tie back through, but it's important that we understand where this is coming from. 1913, the Federal Reserve is created in response to the panics of 1907 and various banking failures that had happened in the decades before it. And essentially, the Federal Reserve is a private institution, that controls money for the United States government. It is not the United States government. And its mandate is to control inflation, the devaluation of the currency. The reason that your, burger and fries and drink now cost almost $20 sometimes, when I feel like yesterday it should have been $5 for a value meal. It's crazy. But it is the Federal Reserve's mandate to control inflation, to support employment, to keep banking stable, to manage interest rates, and to make sure there's enough money in the system, and to add money when there's not, whatever that means. Fast forward to the end of World War II, the Bretton Woods Conference. Now, there's a lot that hinges on the Bretton Woods Conference. If you're not familiar with this, my favorite book on this topic by far, one of my favorite books of all time, I probably talked about it, The Accidental Superpower. It explains how America became America. And it goes all the way back to first principles, like navigable rivers, mountains, geography of all the nations around the globe versus America. Anyway, and does a great job explaining the outcome of Bretton Woods, where America, that just won the war, right, against both Japan, Germany, right, the whole thing. Europe was braced for our invasion, which didn't happen. Take over. It's yours. You won. Instead, we said, no, we just want to trade. We want open free trade, and we want it to be on the American dollar. We get to patrol the oceans. It'll be our Navy that runs things, and it'll be our dollar that international trade is conducted on. And because of that, America achieved monetary supremacy. And this is like practically our lifetimes. My mother and father were born at this time. So this is like, I feel like my life, even though I was not yet born. Close to my birth, 1971, Nixon fully takes us off the gold standard, meaning, way back in the early 1900s, both foreign governments and private citizens could trade in their US dollars for gold. Bretton Woods took that half away, only allowed foreign governments to trade in their US dollars for gold. Citizens could not anymore, trade US currency for gold. So half gold standard gone. But 1971, Nixon takes us fully off the gold standard. So now it is a fiat currency that's just paper money. And, perhaps worse, pretty rapidly, it could be created without even printing it. It could be created just by changing the entry in a digital file, right, on a computer before long. And so over that arc from about the time I was born in the 70s, yep, I'm that old, 1976, baby, all the way up to the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So here we are. It's really not that long. A lot of money is being created, right? And look, I don't mean to like mansplain this to anybody. Like, well, I'm just trying to set the stage for my premise that there is simply too much money that's being created, and particularly in the last 20 years, on the tail of the 2008, 9, 10 financial crisis that I lived very acutely, right? Running a company in the home category. This was a housing-led crisis, full-on recession, people buying fewer couches. My business struggled. We had to muscle our way through. A lot of us lived through that. A lot of us know people who were decimated by that. And for not the first time, but for perhaps the deepest time, the US government engaged in quantitative easing, where they're buying their own bonds and they're basically inventing money to do it. And so just billions and trillions of dollars pumped into the system in order to save the banks that would have collapsed on the backs of all these mortgages that were being defaulted on, et cetera. Fast forward just a decade later, just, maybe 10 years later from the end of that. And we find ourselves in COVID. 4 times the amount of money that had ever been created was created during the COVID pandemic. 4 times the amount of US dollars that had ever existed on the earth were created during the pandemic to stave off what probably should have been a monster recession. I mean, why should a global pandemic create one of the biggest economic booms ever in the world? That seems strange, right? Think about that. A global pandemic will create a monster economic boom for America. My company lived it. For 2 weeks, our stock went to $4. Everyone thought, we had to close all our mall stores. Everyone had to shelter inside. Business is toast. Any retailer, consumer business is toast. And then 2 weeks later, as the government started just pumping money into the system, people getting checks in the mail, businesses like mine started to rip. And all that money in a global pandemic flows through the system, is spent on who knows what: mountain bikes, grills, couches, homes, remodels, even as people struggle and there's death, there's destruction, there's panic, there's fear, but the money is being pumped in at a multiplicity of whatever existed. And it filters through all those transactions, and who catches it? But the giant pools of money, the private equity groups, the funds, the public company funds, the endowments, like any large financial structure that is designed to capture wealth and grow wealth captures that money. Now, what's the problem? What's the problem with this scenario? The problem is, of course, inflation. Like, our dollars are worth less, our burgers cost more, everything costs more. Here we are, 2026. Like, I don't think anyone is not aware of, holy crap, why is everything so flippin' expensive? And why would I call this out as the number one problem? It's just too much money. Here's the fundamental reason. Because if you have any money, if you've made any savings, if you know anybody who has money, let's say, your parents, your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your aunt, your uncle has somehow amassed a chunk of change. You know these people. You know how they think and how they invest. What must their money do? What must a pool of money do? It has to grow. It must grow. It will grow. People that have money, and by the way, it is people. We can blame it on faceless institutions, on funds. Those funds are run by people. And those people feel a moral obligation, a cosmic drive to grow that money. It cannot just sit in an account somewhere. It must grow. So now the biggest funds on the planet, who've collected all that money that flowed through their businesses, because they own most of the businesses, or they own parts of the businesses. Just like Lovesac, it's owned by the biggest, we're a public company, it's owned by the biggest funds in the world, little pieces of us. and they share in our profits if we have any. And we're tiny. We're a speck on the earth, but there are giant corporations generating billions and trillions in profits, and it flows through to these big pools, and they must grow it. But remember, they've already purchased Coca-Cola. They've already purchased Tesla, Google, Facebook, right? The AI companies, all of them. They already own all of them. So what else is there to buy? How else can they grow their money? What are they going to buy? Australia? Are they going to buy Europe? It's not for sale. What else is there? Google alone has a market cap bigger than most of Europe combined. Google alone. And we could go down the list, the seven mega caps, and then every company beyond that. The money has to grow, and it has nowhere to grow. So instead, those companies just keep going up in valuation. And the money grows anyway, even though it probably shouldn't, and grows through multiples. What's a multiple? How much money does a company make in a year? Its value is historically assigned as some multiple of that. The historic multiples on company profits is 13. For 120 years, ups and downs, some spikes, of course, some dips. Companies were typically valued at about 13 times their earnings. Well, right now, the blended average on earnings is somewhere around 40. And it keeps going up because the money has to do what? The money has to grow. One last note. It's not just the Fed that creates money. Every time you or I get a loan for anything, money is effectively created because the bank does not need, we have this myth in our mind that banks, take in our deposits, which they do, and then they lend that money out to people to buy a car or buy a house or whatever, right? So our savings help other people achieve loans. That's true and not true. Banks only need to retain 10% of their lent money. So every time they loan you $100, that bank actually only has 10. Where did that $100 come from? More money creation. So understand that in both scenarios, over the past few decades, just our lifetimes, more money has been created than was ever needed, and it's run amok. And worse, those giant pools of money. And by the way, those pools are now in the trillions. There are many funds now over many trillions. There are many companies valued in the trillions. Remember when it used to be like $1 million was a lot? Even a few $100 million. I mean, those were the AT&Ts and the Coca-Colas. Now you're in the hundreds of billions. These tech AI companies that have no profits, some of them valued already in the trillions. Where does it go from there? The bazillions, right? It's out of control. And there's no putting the genie back in the bottle because the money's already there and the money has to grow, which is why we haven't seen a proper recession, a full-blown 2008, 9, 10 reset. And I don't know that we ever will again. In fact, isn't it sick that there's a side of me that kind of wants to see that because I feel like just like a healthy forest, sometimes, they need to burn in order for new life to grow. But I don't know why, because the stewards of that capital won't let it happen. They don't want to see it happen. They want to see it grow, and they have power to make it grow. Okay, so number one, what's wrong with this world? There's too much money. There's just too much money, and it's run out of places to grow. So it will just grow anyway, outside of all natural forces. Number two, and we'll get to the answer to my son's question in a minute. Number two, it's tied to this. The second problem and the reason our world is so messed up is agency. Agency. Hijacked by desire. Now, keep in mind, agency is all we are. As human beings, as souls, whether you want to get religious, doctrinal about it or keep it, straight logic, all we are is a sum of our decisions. Yes, we have a physical body. Even that, of course, is governed by our decisions, right? Are we fit? Are we unfit? Are we slept? Are we unslept, right? Agency. We are nothing but the product of our decisions. And agency is a beautiful thing. I believe it is our most fundamental God given gift. It is who we are at our core. But agency is often susceptible to desire. And as I've already established, the human beings who have stewardship over these vast pools of capital and money are just human beings, and they are subject to their own desires, appetites, ambitions, temptations, however you define that, right? I know that you know this is true because you are experiencing it every day, just like I am, right? I'm hungry. I want to eat. Oh, I ate a little too much. Ugh. I need to stop looking at social media. Oh, I just killed an hour scrolling. Whatever it is, right? We are subject to our appetites and passions and desires, and those often lead us down paths that we feel some regret or some remorse or some anxiety or angst, and often work against even our own best outcomes. Yet we do those things anyway. I think you only have to be a human to know what I'm talking about. Like, I personally believe that, we are not just bags of blood that might have a spiritual experience if we like. We are actually spiritual beings having a physical experience. But even if you don't accept that, even if you don't want to get spiritual or religious or however you might term it, I know that what I'm describing is true. And this has been studied in more scientific ways, in the most basic of experiments that I think we've all now at this point heard of, like the famous marshmallow experiment, right? Where they put even little kids in a room and they say, hey, they give each kid a marshmallow. This is like at age 4 or something. This is a test of agency and of willpower. And they say, hey, here's a marshmallow. Oh, don't eat it yet. If you choose, you can eat this marshmallow in a moment, or you can leave it sitting on your desk for 5 minutes, or, some indeterminate amount of time. And when we check back in, if you haven't eaten it, we'll give you another marshmallow. Fast forward, a decade or two, and they've found that children who are able to withstand eating the marshmallow and hold out for the second marshmallow, children who are able to exercise a little bit of willpower, a little bit of strength, a little bit of assertion over their desire, are more successful in life. It is the number one predictor, they say, of future success, the ability to self-govern. So, what am I talking about? Well, when human beings who are all just marshmallow kids at their hearts, whether they have great self-control or not, when human beings amass vast sums of wealth, other human beings become subject to those human beings' desires. And whether they're good or bad, like take something very strange, right? Like the poster child trillionaire, Elon Musk, claims he wants to go to Mars. He wants to get mankind to Mars. Is he misguided? Is he good? Is he evil? I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, how important that is. I don't know how meaningful that is. And maybe it'll be insanely meaningful if this earth, nukes itself. But whatever the case, let's call it his pool of capital is subject to his desire. And I think perhaps that if it wasn't for him, there might be nobody else necessarily trying to get us to Mars. Or even if someone had that desire, Without the giant pool of capital, it wouldn't even really be a valid conversation. My point being, we don't need to judge whether it's good or bad. We can just accept the fact that we are subject to other human beings' whims and desires, especially when they have captured vast pools of wealth. Okay, so too much money equals the capture of power and institutions. And this is where it begins to get really, I think, a little bit scary, but also a little bit overwhelming to all of us who have to live on this earth with these fellow human beings who have both deep capital and their own desires, whatever those are. Because again, they fundamentally have their agency, and that agency is often ruled by desire, ambition, appetite. So what's been captured? Well, I think, we've already been talking about it. Finance, like the whole ball of wax, financial institutions at the highest and broadest levels, not just in America, but worldwide. Finance, pharma, healthcare, food, education, of course, the military industrial complex. I mean, come on, that's like, but what does that mean? War as a means for profit. That's what it means, because there is almost nothing more profitable than destroying stuff and then rebuilding it all. There's a lot of money in that. Big tech, a new one, relatively new. Government. And I know it sounds conspiratorial and dark and strange, but this is why I wanted to start at first principles. When you just simply have too much money and human beings in stewardship of that, it will be subject to those human beings' desires. And by the way, a lot of them are well-meaning. A lot of them mean well by whatever it is they're trying to do by capturing our various governmental agencies, our institutions, technology, education, food. They mean well. They mean to feed more people. They mean to fix our education, to teach our children better stuff. But who gets to decide that? Those in power get to decide that. And those in power are put there by money. Look at our election system. You cannot get elected without vast sums of capital. So we're not talking about the candidates. We're talking about those who put those candidates in place. It is the reality that we've created for ourselves. So, with all sorts of different people and peoples controlling these things to suit their desires, because they have a right to exercise their agency, and they get to judge for themselves what's good or bad or interesting or worthwhile. Perhaps one of the most important, in my judgment, one of the most, perhaps the most critical institution that's been captured is media. And this is my answer to my son's question. So a long way around to my son's question. And this is not the answer that I gave him exactly, but I gave him a much shorter version of this. When he says to me, why does our president keep making these big mistakes? I don't know what he meant. I don't know where he heard this. Right? And that's my response to him. Where did you hear our president made mistakes? What mistakes were they? Who judged those to be mistakes? My point being that what we perceive as reality, what we think happened last night, last week on the news, is only the product of some institution's explanation for what happened. And it can be very difficult to know what actually happened, because something actually happened, but it will often be presented through some kind of lens to drive some kind of point of view. And that point of view is most often shaped by whoever And I say it that way on purpose. Whoever is at the top of that food chain shaping it. And they're at the top of that food chain because they had the financial wherewithal to put themselves there. So, my son, it can be very difficult to decipher what mistakes the president makes, what they mean, whether they're even mistakes, whether they're mistakes in the way that they're presented that they're mistakes, even if they're undeniably mistakes on their face. And it's all shaped by media. And so it's up to us, people, friends, listeners. If you stuck with me this long, we know it's up to us to take it all in, to try to find facts and truth and points of views that we can decipher, and then decide for ourselves what we believe and what we should believe and what is good and true and beautiful. So I will pause there because this is simply the setup. This is the state of play. What's wrong with this world? I look at it very simply, people. There is simply too much money that's being created, and that money is under the control of other humans who have a point of view. Good or bad, they have a point of view, and we are subject to it through all of these various institutions. So what do we do about it? If that's the state of play, and I posit that it is, what can I do about it? How do I deal with it? What should I do? Well, let me preface the second half of this diatribe. Because look, I realize, I'm sorry if it sounds negative, if it sounds dark, I apologize. I won't leave you there. I think you'll find, if you stick with me, the conclusion ends in a beautiful place. But before I get to that beautiful place, let me preface this by saying, look, if you're a human being experiencing anything like what I'm experiencing in your life, on earth, day to day, with your family, alone, on your own, because we are all alone in our own minds, with our own thoughts. Life's a struggle. It's hard. Life can be fun. Life can be an adventure. Life should be an adventure, I believe. But it's a struggle nonetheless. And if you feel like it's just you, I promise you that it's not. Every person you look at, including this one, and even those mysterious people behind the curtain that hold those vast pools of capital, they're just human beings. I've known many 100 millionaires, billionaires, still just people doing their things, subject to their appetites, passions, desires, and struggles. And they struggle with things just like you do that nobody even knows about, in ways that nobody knows about. So don't despair. It's normal. I can't fully explain it. I have my point of view on it. That's maybe another podcast, but we're meant to struggle. So just keep going. But let me at least offer some direction as to how you can keep going and in what direction, because we are not helpless. We can rely on at least 3 true principles to get us through. And these 3 principles are what I will base the answer to the question, how do I deal with this, on? Number 1, the principle of faith. The first principle is faith. And I don't mean maybe the way you hear it necessarily, right? I don't mean necessarily in a religious sense, God, like if you choose to take it another way. But I mean faith as a principle to drive action, and God and religion if you choose. But let's just take it at its most basic level, right? When you wake up too early, stressed out about your worries, your financial struggles, your children, your mother, parent, niece, nephew, you know, drug issues, tragedy, impending crisis, who knows? And it's 5 a.m. and you can't see across the room and you stumble to get to the bathroom and turn on the light switch. It's an act of faith. Because how ridiculous would it be for you to reach out your hand and push that little button on the wall if it didn't do anything? Or if you didn't think it would do anything? You flip that switch believing that light will appear. And if light ceases to appear, if the power is out for too long, you will lose faith in that action and you will stop flipping the switch. So as silly as it sounds, it is faith that drove you to flip the switch, not electricity, not the training that your parents gave you to flip the switch. It is faith that motivated you to flip that switch. What am I getting at? It is my recommendation that you put just a little bit of faith into this idea of faith. Okay? As the first principle that I offer you as to how to deal with this. And I'm going to break that down into two pieces. I recommend that you choose to have faith in something bigger. And I recommend that you choose to have faith in the little things. Let's start with something bigger. For me, I am a religious person. I do believe in God. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it is a major piece of my life. If you follow me or listen to me, you've heard me talk about it directly or indirectly. And I would encourage anyone to look into that. How could I have a good thing that brings a lot of joy and happiness and opportunity to me and my family and not share it? But regardless of what you choose to put a little bit of faith in, I recommend you choose something bigger than yourself. Choose something good. And you can judge it by its fruits. You can judge it by its works. You can judge it by how it shows up, whatever it is. But look for something bigger than you to be a part of and that you can have faith in. It is a force in my life. And if you have any doubt that it is bad, and it's yours to judge, this is the beautiful thing about agency, all the way back to the very first of this diatribe. This is the beautiful thing about your agency. You get to exercise your agency any way you choose, right? You get to exercise your agency, so you get to judge if it is good. Keep your eye out for beauty and truth and love in that bigger thing, and find something to put some faith into. But I also believe that you can exercise faith in the small stuff. What am I talking about? For me, we started off, wish you a happy new year. Encourage you all to maybe set some New Year's resolutions. For the last number of years, let me rewind. For years and years, I had, lists of resolutions, physical, mental, spiritual, financial goals, and of course, halfway through January, I'm not working out anymore or whatever. And look, I don't do it anymore. For the last number of years, I've had two resolutions. And I'll share them with you at the risk of, being judged for those. But for me, it's just, I wake up and I read and I pray. And for me, prayer goes even beyond goes beyond only the idea of praying to God, but it encapsulates self-reflection, meditation, visualization. I can spend time on my knees doing all of those things, in my case, with God as a mentor, as a mirror, as a as a friend. Um, but I have the faith that if I wake up and read from the best books, in my case, both the scriptures and I read physical books every day, just great books I can gain knowledge from. And if I do those two things, I read and pray every day, it will put me in the right frame of mind to show up better as a person, as a human on the earth, as a father, as a husband, as a leader. So have faith in the small stuff. That's it for me. The third thing that I do out of habit that I would lump in with my reading and praying, which are my New Year's resolutions every year now, is my morning mantra. And if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me reference it a bunch. And it is very meaningful for me, and it has many components to it. And I'm not gonna share it all with you because it's very personal. But I do my best to recite out loud certain things to myself every day in hopes that I can make them true. And many of these things I wish were true, but are not true, but I want them to be true about myself. And so I've gleaned them over time, and this thing's gotten quite long because I keep adding to it and growing it line by line, word by word, just a little bit, but it's generally, 80% of it's been the same for a number of years now. And I'll just share with you a few lines. So these are things that my mind is hearing said about it every day, out loud if I can. If I can't, I might do it in my car. I might just read it if I'm in public and read it silently, but try to actually think about the words. Okay, so I'll read you a few lines. These are things that I hear every day. Think how powerful this might be in your own life. I will shine today, from my morning mantra. I am capable, hardworking, smart, and loving. This world is beautiful and exciting, but society is corrupt, broken, and unfair. I can live happily nonetheless by exercising faith, hope, and love, but it takes real effort daily. So I begin every day with reading, meditation, visualization, and prayer. I am excited to be with my kids every moment I can, and I look for opportunities to be present, mentor, and teach them, and to be helpful to Tiffany, my wife. I say yes to them when they ask me to play. I put down my phone, look in their eyes, and listen to them. I never dodge. It's just about time. Forget, by the way, this is me talking to you. Forget the elaborate, activities and ideas or whatever. I mean, great if you can plan them, but it's just about time, any time spent present with the people you love. Back to my mantra. Being present is always more important than being any other way. The past is gone. The future doesn't exist. So don't dwell and don't worry. It's pointless. When I don't feel tip top, then I ponder this mantra, read a book, play the piano, or work out without hesitation. I squeeze in my top list each day. 3 core exercises every day when I'm traveling. I'm a good man and I act like one. I'm a good example to other men. I don't have a middle-aged gut because I only eat half or I don't eat much at all. Trying to make that true. I exhibit self-control. I only taste desserts. I only eat half of sweets or carbs. See how specific, right? Faith in the small stuff, you guys. My motivation is true charity. I minister. I serve in my community. I will not just be pleasantly remembered, but I positively impact everyone I can. I am brightly kind to everyone. I compliment everyone. Again, these are things I wish were true. I'm trying to make true, you guys. But I have to remind myself every day. Back to my mantra. People don't remember much of what you say, but do remember how you make them feel. I'm kind to those in passing. I look in their eyes. I seek to do service and put others' interests above my own. I am content. I believe in abundance. I do not operate from a place of fear. I operate from a place of optimism, love, and adventure. Never in a hurry, never worried, never desperate, never stopping short. I'm in this for the long haul. I manifest. I visualize my important outcomes daily. Look, none of us make it out alive, so go for it. I exude love and enthusiasm to all. I'm present. I smile a lot. I am love. So look, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, BS. I know that guy. He's the most hurried, task-oriented, busy, whatever person. It's because, again, these things are not necessarily true, but I hope to make them true over a life of commitment. So still, how do we deal with a messed up world? Principle number one, faith. Faith in something bigger than you. You get to choose, and I respect that. Just choose something good. Faith in the small stuff. In my case, it's waking up, reading, praying, and reciting that mantra. Faith in the small stuff, like flipping a light switch, can fill a room that was dark with light. Principle 2, hope. Yes, I know the first half of this podcast was so dark and depressing, perhaps. I'm sorry. I had to lay the groundwork. That's the field we're playing on. You can deny it. You can choose to ignore it or play dumb to it. But, that's the state of play. We still can have hope. We must have hope. What is hope? Put more simply, it's optimism. It's positivity, right? Who doesn't want a little more optimism and positivity in their life? Who doesn't want to be around people? Who enjoys hanging out with people who are just downers? I know, again, it's a bit negative in the first half, but how do we get that? Let's go back to this mantra, right? Just a few lines. You heard me read them, but let's just dissect a few of these things that I say to myself every day. Right? First, I start by admitting this world is a beautiful and exciting place, but society is corrupt, broken, and unfair. Okay, lay the groundwork. We don't have to, live in the, sugar-coated world of self-affirmations only. We can live in the real world and be hopeful. I follow that statement saying I can live happily nonetheless by exercising faith, hope, and love. But it takes real effort daily. Okay, that's a hopeful idea. I don't have a middle-aged gut because I only eat half or don't eat much at all. That's a hopeful idea. I have to exercise just a little bit of hope that I could actually get a little fitter, and I have to do the work. I'm kind to those in passing. I look in their eyes, I have hope that just by showing up a little better than myself, minute to minute, it can have an effect on the world. I am content. I believe in abundance. I have to remind myself, and here's my favorite line. I do not operate from a place of fear. Because I don't know about you, but every day, and it's often early in the morning for me, you wake up with a little bit of anxiety, you got stuff on your mind. These things are real. Yes, the future doesn't exist, but we still will end up dealing with it. So we, as humans, are sucked into worrying about the future. And how powerful is it as a habit? And it plays like a broken record sometimes in my head because I've done this for so long. I will not operate from a place of fear. And when I find myself doing that, I switch over. I operate from a place of optimism, love, and adventure. Just embrace the adventure of it. This is your life happening to you. Yes, I know it sucks, man. It's hard. It's scary. It's terrifying. That's what makes an adventure. If it wasn't a little bit terrifying, it might not even be fun. I know. That sounds crazy to some, but maybe that's why I love dirt biking and some of the other stuff I love. Hope as a principle of action. So we have faith as a principle of action. You reach out and flip the switch because you believe that action will have effect. We have hope and we can exercise hope, and we are encouraged to exercise hope. But it takes effort. It takes action daily. In my case, it takes muscle memory, the muscle memory I get from reviewing my mantra and doing these other things. But what's the result? Positivity, buoyancy, perseverance, strength comes from hope. We can remain buoyant. We can persevere with a little bit of hope. All right, principle 3. We had faith, we had hope, we have love. That's a big word. What even is it? Let me make it more tactical for you. Others. Make it only about others. Love is a third principle of action. It's not some mysterious ideal. It's not just poetry. It's not just an ethereal idea that we're chasing and ruminating on. It is about other people. Do service. Be giving. You want to feel love, have a kid. Why is that? It's not just genetics. It's not just oxytocin. It's not just a physical thing. Those are true as well. It's not just evolution. You will be put in a position of giving tireless service to another human being, whether you meant to or not. There's a reason that our kids, I don't think, can ever love us as much as we will love them. And if you are a kid, as every human listening is, and if you're lucky enough to have kids, then you know what I'm talking about. I love my mom. I hate to say this out loud. I don't think I can love my mom like she loves me. I don't think I'm a good enough son because I have not served my mom in the way that she served me. The thousands of feces covered diapers, the meals, the drop-offs, the pickups, the headaches, the frustrations, the cleanups, the engaging with teachers and coaches and paying the bills and who knows what, all of the ways that a parent gets to serve a child. They're just another human being. By the way, their soul is as old as yours on the cosmic clock. You just get the chance to raise them. It's a blessing. But regardless, kids or not, we can put ourselves in a position to serve. And that's what love is. Love is simply about other people. We can put ourselves in a position to be generous. We can put ourselves in a position to work, not just for our own interests, but especially for the interests of others. Sometimes when I get frustrated and it's overwhelming and, the pressures of my own job overwhelm me, I think, I could get by. I see these beach bums in San Diego. I got to spend a little bit of time in San Diego, and these people that I feel like sometimes I don't even know if they work. They have a surfboard, they got a bike, they show up every day at the beach, they do their thing, costs nothing as long as they can somehow get that surfboard. It costs nothing to go out and go surfing. They somehow feed them. I'm like, I could probably get by like that and be pretty happy. I have a wife. I have children. In other words, it's not about me. And as tempted as I am sometimes when I see those people, I'll give you another one, my dog. This can sound really weird. Have you ever been jealous of your pet? I mean, dude, you come home, they're happy as they can be, man. They don't even need clothes. They just roll over and let you rub their belly, have such a good time. They seem to be always happy, no matter what's going on. And I find myself jealous of my little dog. How embarrassing is that? But I'm in a position where I get to work on behalf of my wife, on behalf of my children, on behalf of my 2,000 employees, that if I suck at my job, puts their livelihoods in peril. And I love the challenge of it. We can embrace our work, however challenging it may be, in the pursuit of serving others. And I posit that it will become more fulfilling. We live in a world that's constantly, talking about self-care, watching out for yourself, your truth, my truth. And I think that I get where that's coming from. And I can't wake up and be successful working if I'm not sharp, if I'm not refined, if I'm not developing and improving. So I try. But whenever we can reframe our trials and travails, our efforts and our work through the lens of doing it for others, we are engaging love. Love is a principle of action. I'll wrap this up with a quick story. There's this guy in my neighborhood. There was this guy in my neighborhood. He's passed away. And at times, though I have admired the shirtless surfers, though I have admired my shirtless dog, and the ease that I perceive in that lifestyle, there's this older guy who, worked his whole life, did his job, did his thing, had a nice little house. It seemed like a nice relationship with his family members and his wife. And every day when I'd come home from my job, I'd see him out there with his little four-wheeler and a little trailer and a lawnmower out of the back, mowing someone's lawn, raking up the leaves. And he just roamed the neighborhood. He must have done this for, I don't know, more than a dozen people every week. Older people, probably people that probably couldn't do it for themselves. People that probably could afford, in many cases, to have it done. And this guy is not charging. He just served. He could have been golfing. He could have been hot tubbing. Could have been collecting stamps and looking at birds. I don't know. But he just served people. And he did it until he died. And I really look up to that. And I promise you, if you find a way to make your trials and travails and work about others, you will feel loved. You will feel more love in your life, and you will feel loved. Faith, hope, and love. Not as abstract principles, but as principles of action. How do we deal with a messed up world that has too much money and too few people in control of it? Kind of messing everything up for the rest of us. Faith, hope, and love in the form of action. So fight the fight. And I will leave you with the words of one of my favorite poems that runs through my mind, as do different bits of literature and copy from the hundreds of books that I've subjected myself to. From the immortal words of Dylan Thomas: "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Have a happy new year. Love the one you're with. Being present is more important than being any other way. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you bothering to have listened to this if you did. And I wish you nothing but peace, love, happiness, and abundance if you choose to take the action necessary to get it. Be well.
Once a year to take my friends away. It should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.